White House counsel Emmett Flood will be departing in 2 weeks. That's an announcement we just got moments ago from President Trump in his tweet. Emmett Flood, who came to the White House, he says in his tweet, to help me with the Mueller report, will be leaving service on June 14th. NBC's Mike Viqueira will be joining us very shortly. Let's go to Katie Phang. Katie, if you could, what's your reflection on this announcement of Emmett Flood as you look at his relevance to the Mueller report and his function to handling the Mueller report, as the president is saying here? What does it say?
So, Richard, as we all will remember, Emmett Flood came on board to change the tide in terms of the attitude and the response that was coming from Trump and his administration to special counsel Robert Mueller and his team. The very last coup de grace, I guess if what we could call it, from Emmett Flood was the letter that recently was sent to Bill Barr asserting executive privilege from Donald Trump for people like Don McGahn, maybe even Hope Hicks, to be able to come and testify to Congress. And so Flood's parting shot was basically to support Donald Trump, his policies, his position in terms of wanting to muzzle employees, both current and former, from being able to speak to Congress.
NBC's Mike Viqueira now joining us, running to the camera here as we get the news. And Vic, I always appreciate it because we've done this many a time together here. Why now? Why is it happening now?
Well, I think Katie pretty much covered this. This is not unexpected. Remember, Richard and Katie, that Emmett Flood came in May of 2018, taking over for the retired Ty Cobb, but really viewed as somebody who had some experience in dealing with these kinds of issues, these ethical issues, these political issues when it comes to potential investigations or real live investigations of the president and the presidency. After all, he had worked on the Clinton impeachment on the Clinton side. So he had that experience. Katie referenced the fact that he's a key player or a key decision maker in invoking executive privilege after the Mueller report has come out now in terms of people that Democrats in Congress want to hear from. He also sent a letter just after the Mueller report was revealed, or at least the summary was revealed by the Attorney General Bill Barr, that sort of criticized Bob Mueller for not coming to a conclusion one way or the other on obstruction of justice, ironically enough. He thinks that Mueller should have stated one way or the other. After all, that is what prosecutors do in the estimation of Emmett Flood. But he is going to go gently now into that good night, sort of a punctuation mark. I'm sure the White House will spin it that way. As a matter of fact, the president did in fact tweet this just a few minutes ago. Emmett Flood, who came to the White House to help me with the Mueller report, will be leaving service on June 14th. He's done an outstanding job. No collusion, no obstruction, the president says in his characteristic all caps. Case closed. Emmett is my friend, and I thank him for the great job he has done. So certainly the president, the White House getting out in front of this, painting this as part of the plan, an amicable parting. Emmett Flood also at the president's right hand during all of this, and probably, from what we understand and from all accounts, played an instrumental role in keeping the president from actually testifying in person and avoiding a subpoena from the special counsel.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.